Hello and very warm welcome to the Arise interview, 60 minutes of multifaceted discussions where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and will feature the voices at the heart of the stories. I am Christian Ogodo. Thanks so very much for joining us. Coming up in the next hour, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari came to power in the 2015 January elections on the back of two key resounding messages: improving the security environment and reviving the fight against corruption. On the latter, at least, he can point to some progress, albeit it is perceived in some quarters to be a one-sided war against corruption targeted at the opposition, but not so for some other persons. There is a renewed vigor on the Buhari's corruption fight, with the country's Attorney General saying that the government's corruption fight is total, not discriminatory, but meant to curbing impunity. Today, we're weighing on the anti-corruption war of the federal government. In a moment. It is said that only beneficiaries of corruption will question Buhari's anti-graft war. But many opinion leaders have argued that the corruption fight is targeted at political opponents. That again is disputable by some other school of thought. Now, it seems like the corruption fight of the Buhari-led administration is heating up and getting more intense, with Nigeria's Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, describing it as total, comprehensive, and dispassionate, devoid of any political or ethnic sentiment or inclination. Here is Abubakar Malami citing some of the achievements of the Buhari-led administration and saying they'll leave no stone unturned in the fight against corruption.
The government is not relenting in the pursuit of Nigeria's stolen wealth. The recovery efforts are ongoing and work is in progress. Government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, will leave no stone unturned to recover wealth stolen from Nigeria, either by individuals or corporate entities. Our fight against corruption is total, comprehensive, and dispassionate, devoid of any political or ethnic sentiments or inclination. One of the multiple institutions involved in the fight against corruption, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, was able to, from 2015 to September 2019, convict 1,636 persons involved in corruption-related offenses. It might interest you to note that former state governors and even serving senators are not spared. Currently, high-profile personalities, including judicial officers and former governors indicted for corruption, have been prosecuted and many sentenced to jail. We have 3 former governors convicted and serving various jail terms for corruption-related crimes while in office. Equally, 22 ex-governors are either under probe or on trial. In terms of providing support for the economic development of the nation, we have succeeded in reviewing our laws that have economic undertones, inclusive of the Finance Bill and Deep Offshore Profit Sharing Contract Act, among others, for the purpose of enhancing the economic well-being of the country.
That was Nigeria's Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation. For more on this, I've now been joined by a senior lecturer at Bayes University, Dr. Sam Amadi, who is also a lawyer, rights activist, and by Pelumi Olajengbesi, who is a public interest lawyer. Gentlemen, very warm welcome to the Arise interview. It's end of the year, and the Ministry of Justice, through the Minister, the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, has been highlighting the achievements of this administration, particularly on the second goal of its drive to stamp away corruption in the country, which it's seen generally as a huge cankerworm, an impediment to socio-economic development of the society. Let me start with you, Belumi. How would you score, how much contradiction would you have against the Justice Minister with all he has ruled out? 1,636 convictions, high-profile ones, 22 ex-governors are either under probe or some are already in court and some have been convicted.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I want to start by saying the Minister of Justice is doing his job. He has duty to promote his government and to let the world know that this is what the government is doing. But we say we need to put in clear perspective. The Buhari's administration understanding of what corruption is quite different from what corruption is. I think what the government is doing basically is that the government is interested in economic crime. Corruption is beyond the concept of trying to get money back, trying to recover money and all of that.
But isn't it germane that, money illegally stolen by public officials, by politicians, are gotten back? Isn't it important?
It's fantastic. It's a very good one. And I think we should commend the government for that. But what I'm saying, because what you are talking about corruption, we must look at corruption within a wider scope of it. The government itself can't be standing on corruption and claiming that it's fighting corruption. So in my own view, I believe strongly that the government is doing pretty well in terms of economic crime fighting. But if we want to talk about corruption, corruption is spectrum spoken. You have to look at it from different contexts. And I think this government must come to appreciate that there are a lot of things that the government must address relating to corruption. Nowadays, you see a lot of people criticize the government that the corruption is one-sided, is this, is that. This is simply because that the fight is one-sided. The reason is because government has refused to address certain things. Fighting corruption is not just about recovering money. We need to strengthen our institution to ensure that the institution deliver on their mandate. We need to ensure that the organogram of government is structured in a way that people do what they are supposed to do. If you continue to say, okay, if you say you are fighting corruption, when this government is done and another government is coming in, are we going to sustain some of the achievement of the government? So I sincerely believe that the government is not doing enough in terms of corruption fight. What the government is doing is that, yes, the government is recovering some stolen wealth, and of course the government is fighting economic crime. But economic crime is just an aspect of corruption. When you look at corruption, corruption is an attempt, to achieve a particular goal through an undue means, through a very, very bad means. So if you have a government in place who does not have respect for the rule of law, if you have a government in place who cannot respect the decision of the court, that is corruption in itself. If you have the rules and regulations guiding the modus operandi of business of government and you don't follow it, it means that you're corrupt. So if you're talking about corruption in the real context of it, this government has not done enough.
Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, you are equally a lawyer to an arrest, and if you want to assess it, Belumi is saying that the dragnet should be wider than the economic, fight against corruption or economic corruption and the rest. What kind of dragnet does the government need, to achieve much more than this?
Well, thank you. I think I accept his premise and most of his conclusion. Now, first, let's start with conceptualization, really. That's the problem. Every form of governance should start with conceptualizing. Even any form of management, you want to consider what are you trying to deal with. So this government has a characteristic failure to have a clear conception of certain things. And so, for example, corruption is a critical one. Those who study corruption think in terms of what's corruption. And of course, we know that from the World Bank, that from all the scholars of corruption, the idea of corruption is the misuse of process for private good, private and private benefit. Misuse of either public resources, public rules, public processes, public offices, and public opportunities for personal, sectarial group interests. And so, from that perspective, then
that's from a political perspective. Now we're looking at appointments and things like that.
Public resource, money, economic crime, and by the way, if you look at the public and private, there's also corruption in the private sector. But from the perspective of governance in the public sector setting, we always look at what public officials do. So, from Pelumi's perspective, and I think it's right, recovering money is incidental. By the way, if, like we says, that there must be remedy for every wrong. So if people have done something wrong and they are found guilty, then there will be some penalty. So that money recovery is It's actually a consequence, an outcome of a process. We shouldn't use it as the benchmark of, otherwise you can recover money from people illegally, illicitly. I mean, for example, you could hound people and they pay ransom money. That's recovery money. So if, for example, you hound me and I know that my life is threatened, I know that nobody will obey any court order, and I'm asked, look, the only way to
even when you are not corrupt, when you've not been found to be fraudulent.
The only way to do this is to pay out money. You may pay money. So I don't want to use money indicators.
And how will such money be accounted
absolutely.
for?
So the point is first is that take economic corruption. That's fine. Yahoo, the government.
Cybercrime.
They're putting a lot of, and they're doing well containing that virus. But essentially, have we reformed government procurement processes? When this government came, before they came to power, they talked about the Procurement Council, which was created by the Public Procurement Act. And the idea of Procurement Council is to take off some of this control over the presidency and over people in power. A year ago, was about to inaugurate that, and they scared him away, that he was going to cede power to the Minister of Finance. He didn't do that. Jonathan didn't do that. President Buhari, whose government, who came to power under a change, a toga of anti-corruption, was the best person in position to. We've not done that, okay? Now, think in terms of even asset declaration that Yaradua started and stopped. It didn't happen. So essentially, even if you talk about economic corruption, we've not even done as we ought to do in terms of reforming institutions, changing incentive, creating open. What this government has done well, I think, first, is not even the prosecution, is this the recent portal.
Absolutely, I was going to come to that.
Corruption. Yeah. That's big one. Openness is the critical agenda.
So that's a huge plus
that's
for the government.
So, but the people who are promoting government don't even see that. They talk about prosecution. By the way, most of these prosecutions were started under Obasanjo as well. Jonathan did a lot of them. And the AGFA, the Administrative of Criminal Justice Reform Act has helped in fast-tracking conviction. Because in the past, people can delay proceeding, filibuster, drag out, go to appeal. Now it's streamlined. That's why you're seeing these convictions come down quickly, because the 12 years, 10 years that were wasted, debating are going up and down. Now, open and close. So we shouldn't give the government too much credit for these convictions, because the cases, most of them were started. What we're looking forward now is, even the political corruption setting. Look at the elections we've run, we've done in the last, since 2015. They were markedly corrupt, markedly violent. We saw the Bullion movement. Nobody has spoken about it. Some people have even put a claim to EFCC. They say nothing. And somebody says, look, it's my private money. On the day of election in Bullion, at least investigate. So essentially, I've not seen much happening in that in terms of bragging right.
That's why people say it's one-sided.
We want to see new prosecutions, but above all is that corruption, the symbolism of corruption, is very important in fighting corruption. Create new optics. So when the president makes appointments, and the people who are appointed are persons whose lack of corruption is evident, it creates a new expectation of a new change in the game. But when the president makes appointments, and the people there are people who themselves, even if they've not been pronounced by court, are people who the same government is determined to prosecute via the EFCC. It sends a big signal.
Were prosecuting before and withdrew the case, and the Attorney General enters a nulli prosecute.
So the Attorney General is talking about fighting corruption. On what evidential basis did you enter a nulli prosecute? So primarily, and let me end shortly on this, that look, a regime that's not committed to what we call ethical individualism, that means everybody is equal, that's not committed to rule of law in the sense that rules are more important than outcome, that's not committed to some level of democratic accountability, uniform, will be difficult to fight corruption. Africa's corruption crisis is not about individuals who are corrupt. It's about a system that is not democratic and open and accountable. And as long as we don't do that, as long as we are thinking about, take one person out, many people are in, nobody takes them in because they are privileged, either politically, culturally, ethically, otherwise. So I think that's really where to go.
Fantastic. What a good way to end this first part. Gentlemen, we'll be back again because we're going to take some messages. You're still watching the Arise interview. We've got many more to come. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Arise interview with me, Christian Ogdo. Thanks for staying with us. The Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, says he is impressed with the judiciary's speedy handling of election cases during this year's post-election litigation season and the attention being accorded high-profile corruption cases. The panelists here have said so much about that. Of recent, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission arrested a former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Bello Adoke SAN, shortly after his arrival in Nigeria from Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. It is said that the former AGF, who fled the country in 2015, has pending criminal charge brought against him by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for alleged abuse of office and money laundering in respect of the granting of the oil prospecting license OPL 245 to Shell and Eni. In a moment, we'll go into details, but first, here's the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, reacting to the arrest of Mohammed Adoke, who is a former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and other issues concerning the nation's judiciary.
Relating to the former Attorney General of the Federation, I think there are multiple judicial cases pending before the judiciary, and against the background of the sub judice principle of the law, I would like to comment one way or the other in that respect or direction, because I cannot be talking in preemptive sense of preempting the judicial position as it relates to the matter. And I am equally not in a position to confirm the statement relating to the arrival of the former Attorney General in Nigeria or otherwise. I have not been officially briefed in that respect. The assessment of the role of the judiciary in terms of entrenching the democracy and the democratic process. This is the first time in the history of Nigeria that judiciary live up to expectations in terms of speedy dispensation of electoral cases and matters that are pending before it.
Okay, I say I have my guest in the studio here. Balumi Olajegbensi is a public interest lawyer, and Dr. Sam Amadi is a senior lecturer at the Bayes University. Let me start with you. The former Attorney General, the OPL 245 case is something that has spanned about 4 or 5 administrations, and we've had convictions in the US, I think in Switzerland, in the UK, and right now some trials are going on in Italy. But in Nigeria, we've not seen that, and this is the source or the genesis of this over $1 billion corruption case we're talking here.
Yeah, I think we should commend the current administration for having the courage to pursue this, because this issue of Malibu Oldie and all of this stuff, you know, it's actually a very serious one. This is one thing that has damaged the reputation of our country. And so if we have a government right now that is looking into it deeply, we should encourage the government so that the government can unravel everything that has to do with, the scandal.
But the Justice Minister had said that there's been speedy, one of the gains of this administration is that there's been speedy trials of, No, speedy trial is not just about this administration. You see, the law itself is evolving and it's developing every day, and we have improvement. In 2015, the former president, this Administration of Criminal Justice Act that was enacted and that was put in place has been doing a lot. You cannot play the game outside what the law says. So we have to have speedy administration of criminal issues, because the law has placed premium attention on it. So it's not just about this administration. Of course, this administration is trying, particularly relating to this issue, but I do strongly believe that the administration can still do better. Okay, Dr. Sam Amadi, let me ask you, this administration has had high-profile convictions. It says at least 22 ex-governors are either being investigated, prosecuted, some are in prison now. And of course, the latest one is the former governor of Abia State, Oju Kalu, who bagged a 12-year jail term and the rest. Isn't that commendable too? Just like you've said, even cyber crimes, offenses, which not so minor, but very damaging to the reputation of the country because these involves wire frauds and the rest of other nations.
I think the government deserves credit for continuing to prosecute these cases and perhaps maybe based on outcome, maybe doing much more vigorous and thorough job, we should say, until we look at the case file, but essentially results. Like the Americans say, pragmatism. If you get results, so result means you're doing well. So having got this confusion, but like my friend said here, we should also attribute it to changes, law reform changes in the legal system, the law signed by Jonathan himself, the Administration of Justice law, criminal justice administration law, has been helpful because it has put a lot of presumption in favor against actually the accused persons. I mean, in a way, people can argue from a human rights point of view that there's actually constraint, but it has enabled prosecutors largely. It has saved time, closed down on frivolous application and empowered the courts to kind of decide to rule in everything and take applications all in all. So
let me just quickly add this. The former Attorney General and Minister of Justice is in EFCC's detention because the EFCC just secured another 14 days court order.
We didn't have that in the past, and the feel of...
What I'm saying is that this is a case that has been ongoing, and the EFCC had already accused Adoke of being complicit in this matter. Shouldn't they have completed or concluded their investigation and charge him to court immediately?
Absolutely, and that's why some of us feel that the manner in which the courts have viewed these reforms have damaging effect on human rights. There's a sense in which, because you see, policy environment shape law. So people always feel like, because we are dealing with a hegemon called corruption, because corruption has really killed this country, bleed this country of essential resources, there's a public sentiment against persons who use lawyers to elongate proceedings and in a way escape justice. So what has clearly is a group think. It's a public
the lawyers must do their job. They have a client.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That, but if you look at it essentially, by now you take him into custody 14 days. Now, the constitutional provision for 24 or 48 hours at most has somewhat been negated because, of course, the Constitution provides for laws that could undermine. But essentially, we expect that the prosecutor agency should do their work. They have been saying, bring this guy. By now,
they would have gotten all the evidence. And
by the way, he got for interim foreclosure. In fact, he even got an order against him, which was vacated. And now he's back. So we expect that in the next, maybe by Monday or so, or Tuesday, he should be in court. So the point, therefore, is we need to see the fight against corruption, affecting imprisonment, balance with justice, balance with the presumption of innocence. But for me, really, the focus of anti-corruption is not just those prosecutions, because those prosecutions are actually, action, is presumption of innocence. It depends on how the case goes. And if you have a bad lawyer, you can actually kill your case. I'm more concerned with how we are making corruption no longer attractive. That is where anti-corruption should go to.
Okay, we'll come to that,
absolutely.
Because we'll talk about strengthening of institutions, that can really fight corruption. It's not just going to courts and the rest, but certain institutional provisions or, values must be put in place. But let me ask you, Pelumi, do you think the Nigerian judiciary, the courts, are overtly intimidated, overwhelmed, and the rest when you find a constitutional breach, like Dr. Sam Amadi has mentioned in Adoke's case? You can't detain somebody more than 48 hours, and the same court is breaching the constitution of the nation.
The new law authorizes them.
Well, you see, the court has certain powers to take certain decisions.
Discretionary powers. So can you take a discretionary power outside the constitution, constitutional provisions?
No, but the discretionary power is also guided by our laws. So anything the court is doing must be settled within the law. And if the court has taken a particular decision, if you're not comfortable with it, you have other courts you can seek
to challenge that decision.
But you see, essentially, we must be very careful about this idea of fighting corruption. You see, in this government dance to the gallery a lot, and we must also be careful about the political perspective. When you're fighting corruption, have the mindset of sanitizing the system and making the country a better place. Don't look at it from the perspective of politics, from the perspective of telling people this is what you've achieved. Absolutely. Ordinarily, a serious country, a serious organization like EFCC, there has been a lot of noise about this advocates movement, about this fact that they have facts. In fact, they've attacked some of his properties and all of that. Ordinarily, we believe that there's no need for any order to detain Adoke again. Since he's in Nigeria, take him to court straight. Let the matter be tried head on. Since you have all the necessary facts, you had abundant time to investigate all of these issues. And so EFCC, with this new 14 days, I think they should be able to perfect all of their documents and approach the court. However, beyond these 14 days, if EFCC is going back to court to seek another order to further detain Adoke, then it will go to show to everyone that EFCC is not even serious.
Or is politically motivated.
Yes, and
because that's the accusation against the government and the rest. And mostly, they would say those who are not, you know, in the same party with them.
Anybody.
But I would say Ojikalu and APC chieftain.
Just to add to that, I think the issue around political motivation and bias is different. There is an administrative and institutional incapacity. You see, those who have been to EFCC and some of the guys, operatives there, may not be the top guy, but some of them there do not have the skills. Oftentimes, you know, the politics and optics of cases may be cloud and overwhelm the technicalities of the case. So what I think, like I said, is that, look, yes, we know that cases are difficult, but you need to really go back room and develop case against persons. Stop media trial, that's number one. Too much media trial in Nigeria. And it's really difficult to lose, for example, the judge that has been cleared. What does it mean has been cleared? The guy's name has been ruined, you know? So we should be both restrained in arresting people, especially when you have access to them. And by the way, now that I've arrested him, like I said, maybe they have not had one-on-one. This is to debrief him. This is to have interview. They have done documentation, data gathering. Now they are one-on-one. So we assume that in the next 2, 3, 4 days, they will be able to confront these issues and build their case. And if the case doesn't shape up well, truncate it, put it in abeyance. Then after so many years, you might see new evidence to resurrect it. But oftentimes, they just must have the case.
Well, let me say the EFCC usually will use private lawyers, private prosecutors to drive their cases and the rest. So the lawyers to have their own shortcomings in here. But gentlemen, we'll take another short break because we want to bring some commercial messages. You're still watching the Arise interview. Do stay with us because we'll have more to interrogate about the achievements of the judiciary in the next segment. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I am Christian Ogdo. Thanks so very much for staying with us. I still got Balumi Olajegbensi. He's a public interest lawyer, and Dr. Sam Amadi. Now, gentlemen, when you look at the results or indices reeled out by some international agencies, you know, like the Transparency International, you find that it contradicts to some extent, I don't know how largely, the achievements being reeled out by the Minister of Justice, what they've achieved in fighting corruption by this administration. How do you reconcile this?
Yeah, it's very simple. The current administration is fighting corruption believed to have been committed in the past. But the administration is not concerned about the fact that the day-to-day running of its government. No,
but don't forget, you'll be contradicting what the administration has done, which Dr. Sam Amadi has ruled out. The portal, the financial, the financial portal, for example, is a very tremendous thing to curtail that.
Now, you see, when we talk about corruption, like I said the other time, we must not narrow down corruption to the issue of financial crime.
Okay.
Corruption, where it's like a badge on the government. It has to do with the value system of government itself. That how is this government being viewed out there? The perspective of people running government in their day-to-day activities. You look at all government agencies and look at what are their operations. So I think seriously that we need to address all of this. Now, if you talk about the look or the assessment of international organization based on what this government is doing, their assessment couldn't have been on the basis of a particular amount of money was recovered recovered. But the assessment will be based on their interaction, their interface with institutions of government. For example, now, if a National Assembly wants to renovate a National Assembly for, the complex for 37 billion naira, and there are questions as to what are the processes, what are the procurement processes that this has gone through before
the valuation,
and all of that.
The quantity.
So, you see, these are vital aspects of our life that other organizations are assessing. Not that we've recovered this, we've recovered that. You wonder at times that this government talks a lot about the fact that we recovered a lot of money, and yet you will still go out there to go and borrow money to do things, and this is a very serious issue. So I believe strongly that for us to have a good image out there, then we need to look at the quality of people who are in government, people who have character and who have the capacity to deliver on their mandate. So for example, now if you appoint someone who has a corrupt profile as a minister for this or a minister for that, and that person is interfacing with people out there outside the country, and that person is advancing his selfish interest, then the international organization couldn't have scored your country as a country that is decent enough or a country that is fighting corruption. So I believe strongly that these international organizations are interested in the character of people in government, and of course the character of our government itself, and that talks about the value system of government. And you cannot address that by fighting corruption alone. You have to address a lot of issues, a lot of indices. You have to address the wage system. You have to, when you talk about declaration of assets and all of that, how many people in government today still declare their assets properly? Now, if you look at the Bureau, they've had just 7 cases in the entire history of the organization, just 7 cases, and how many convictions? So the thing is that, in fact, this organization come up whenever government wants to actually expose a particular person within the system. So I do not think that we should approach corruption issue in a form of fire brigade approach. I think institutional issues must be addressed. You see a lot of people who are in position of authority, who have a lot of things they are doing on daily basis in terms of transaction on behalf of the government. There was a time that there was this issue at the Ministry of Youth and Sport that maybe a particular amount of money was sent to Nigeria from an international organization, and it was so scandalous, and this happened under this administration.
That money has been returned.
Has been returned. But ordinarily, things like that are happening and people are not hearing. But ordinarily, if this government is serious about corruption, that singular act should be investigated. People who are involved should be dealt with. There are people in this country every day that we keep complaining about their disposition. Look, let me give you another example. A government that wants to fight corruption will not allow the man who is the head of the corruption engine room to be acting. We should have a substantive chairman in EFCC. A man that is acting will feel that he is not comfortable, he can be removed at any point in time, and because of that, while he's fighting a particular segment of the corruption, he has to also leave some people that may actually expose him to trouble, because he's also interested in his office. So the thing is that a country that is serious about fighting corruption must ensure that all the institutions that is involved in corruption fight must be put in place properly. For example, when you talk about the judiciary, the way the federal government handles issues that has to do with judiciary is not a good perception out there.
But the government has gotten some judiciary officers on trial, and they've gotten convictions.
I am not talking about getting conviction.
Yeah.
For example, now you're talking about international organizations. The international organizations are aware of the laws governing business of government, and so if the law says this is the procedure to do a thing, and our government, the institution that is in charge of running our laws, is doing another thing, that simply means corruption. That settles it. Let me give you an example. The way and manner the former Chief Justice of Nigeria was removed in this country, it will remain as a major stigma in the history of our country. And a lot of people are not talking about it. We left that now and we're facing another thing. Yes, he could be corrupt. Yes, you could have some things against him, but you must follow what the law says. You must follow the procedure. Why we have the law in place is to ensure that business of government is regulated. But you see, the government we have in place now do not even have the character the capacity. I do not want to start mentioning issues within government, but I mean, it's very, very clear. I'm not a native doctor, but I know very well that this government is not fighting any corruption. This government is recovering money. Yes, it's recovering money from people they believe they've stolen money. But how are you sure, for example, this government can look at someone's building tomorrow and just say, okay, they put EFCC this thing, today they want to forfeit the property and all of that. That is not investigation. I mean, whatever we are doing must be very, very thorough. And you see what we are doing today, we are not doing anything. We are only destroying the institutions of government. Because when other people come in tomorrow, they also want to say to the world that they are doing this, they are doing that, and they'll be repeating the same processes.
Okay. Balumi, Sam, Balumi is talked about institutional reform, and everybody will look at the police as if the police alone can really solve this problem. Nobody is looking at the agency of government where the people are reorientated, you know, like the National Orientation Agency, which has offices in the whole 36 states plus the FCT and in the whole local governments. It's not being driven down.
Well, I think, let me tell you, practical. In 2018, I think, the Chatham House did a very good social science research on corruption in Nigeria. And the point we talk about collective action. You see, corruption happens because somebody believes that somebody expects him to act corruptly, and therefore it's like it's a normative behavior. So you know that people, this is what they expect from you, and you behave that way. And that's why in hierarchical societies like ours, the top is very important. The president, for me, has the best credential to solve this problem. But unfortunately, they have not done that. Take, for example, when he came into power, the first issue around clarity about asset declaration, he didn't do that. That's important. You might think it's just fictional, but the idea is very important. Open, public declaration, which is what Yar'Adua did. Second, the issue about National Assembly election. It's the politics drives the corruption in this country. Mm-hmm. The politics about how we acquire power. Look at our electoral process. We've not had any reform. That's about institution. No reform that's significant along our electoral process for 5 years. Elections have gotten worse. Mm-hmm. To the extent that, like the guy from Oxford argued that if elections are bad, then only people who are terrible can manage that process. Therefore, a natural selection happens. Good guys
stay back.
Those who are stronger in terms of criminality come on forth. So I'm not concerned about the past as much as the future. Yeah. If I was advising government, I would say pretend as if he didn't know there was something stolen last year. Recreate today. Difficult for anybody to steal anything. Today, if you look at the newspapers, allegations around FRS, for example, whether it's true or not, I mean, every day, agents of government are being alleged massive corruption. You should more have a handle around today. Create institutions, appoint persons whose character behavior is transparent. For example, Nate is doing a great job. If you follow that pattern across all agencies, when I was in NEC, I became chairman of NEC at a point where they said it was too corrupt.
Where you never recruited anybody.
Now listen, because for good person, now listen, when I came in, we won the best in the country, we won procurement. Now I've left. 4 years, NEC is still winning the best in public procurement. Why? Because we set up the system. Yeah. We're not too much concerned about who to punish in prison, but never again. And corruption is actually gaming. It's about systems that are open. Number one, you close it. It's about discretionary, too much discretion in the system. For I give you an example, procurement. We don't have discretion. We've had NGOs, the idea, you open it publicly, they take the things away. So even if I want to help you, I'm stuck. So I think the first problem with this government corruption is conceptual. Yeah. They have a conceptual blind. They don't see
what corruption is.
Rulelessness is actually the heart of corruption. Why is it that places like Norway, the Scandinavians are not corrupt? They are more democratic, they are more open, and they're less corrupt. Because corruption is a behavioral pattern. It is habit. People develop corrupt tendencies because they expect that there will be no punishment. It's easy to be corrupt, and there's nothing you lose. Transactional costs. So if I was advising government, focus more on creating accountability in the system. Stop emphasizing good people. Pretend everybody is bad. What we call the bad man's theory of law. Yeah. Everybody is bad. Everybody's going to cheat. So open the system up. So they should emphasize their open government program, emphasize their portal, emphasize accountability and rule-based behavior. That's the worst thing. For example, National Assembly, we see issues around NNPC. There was so much hope around NNPC and transparency process. We've not seen structured change from the old NNPC. Perhaps the guy that is good or bad, it doesn't count. and that guy will come there, good, it doesn't count. So we want to move on from a low-level institution to a high-level institution. We want to move from a third world prebendal, primordial, even some people say neo-feudal institutions where the kingship idea, somebody is there, he has to do whatever he likes. Again, very important, is that EFCC has a mandate both to prosecute and education. That mandate under Nuhu Ribadu, there was a strong civic involvement with changing mindset, like I talk about national orientation. But what is missing actually is that you cannot be a government that is not doing well for legitimacy. You are not engaging the public. You are actually having a bad press. At the moment, the government has very low trust factor, trust quotient. People don't trust you, whether right or wrong. You can't change behavior. You need some social capital. You need some, some moral capital. You need some trust capital to begin to change behavior. And so I think government should move away a little bit from force. This government has been defined more with force and militaristic approach. There should be more soft power, power of persuasion, power to change institutions, and change behavior and expectation. That will be a better way to deal with corruption.
Very well said, Dr. Sam Amadi. Okay, we'll take in another break to bring you some messages as you're still watching the Arise interview. We'll go more still ahead. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Arise interview. I still have my guest in here. Gentlemen, I want to take us back to this OPL 245. Like we know, and the world knows, convictions have been made in other crimes. In Nigeria, not even one trial. This is a transaction, a business transaction that went on during the regime of the late General Sani Abacha. Why is it the justice system or what that, this is not being done, and first, only at the 11th hour now?
First, we were reacting when internationals started punishing their government. This was not Nigeria that busted a crime. This was Nigeria riding a momentum, the wave. So people have been prosecuted, tried, Nigeria started. Now let's not forget this. Nigeria is set up like a criminal state, a corrupt state. Look at how many countries give oil block the way we do. So when we talk about fighting corruption, I made the point in a tweet that, look, no regime has fought corruption, including this one. Because
and one of the beneficiaries just said in the papers,
former
chief of army staff saying that if he speaks Nigerian...
I will be sleeping. Now, this the former chief of staff himself became a multi-billionaire.
The
richest woman in Africa became a billionaire by what you call windfall. So a country is set up to create windfall. Many people are working in Abuja with only SEPAs and Agbada.
And suddenly
they have just no productivity. They are beneficial. So Nigeria is a state created to be shared. If you look at what Professor Dudley...
that's why they talk of the national cake.
Billy Dudley argued many decades ago in his book, one of the greatest political scientists from Europe in Nigerian issues, said Nigeria is a criminal alliance between the military, the politicians, the rulers. It's a bureaucracy. So the business class and the politicians are the same. Such country can't fight corruption. That's my problem with fighting corruption.
That's why the ordinary people in the country can't fight it.
So the whole government say they're fighting corruption. If they don't deal with the system of privilege, system of allocation
within the elitism,
you're a joker. And this government has not done that. You see, fighting corruption is not taking out the fall guy, the guy who was found by the wayside. Change the whole country, move it away from rent seeking, which is endemic, to productivity. Why should there be several generals who are billionaires? What did they do? So what I want to see, so we couldn't prosecute these cases because it's part of the business of government. This happened because it's become a high profile. What about the other guys, what's the oil company, the one that, Halliburton? The Halliburton is the mode of business in Nigeria. But when it was triggered by international, foreign countries,
from America,
then we have to respond. So Nigeria has been blackmailed to respond. Nigeria is not originally responsible because our mode of governance till today is the same mode that produced this Etete and Adoke issue, the same mode that produced the Halliburton, the same mode that produced the allegations around MTN, all these allegations. We are doing business in reactionary in a black hole. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. Yeah. The Nigerian system is set up to give those who control it, those who run the government, the right to decide how to do with the resources. And so what government has done that I like is this portal. They should intensify government, open government, accountable government that's based on production. What people take away is production. For example, look at the villa, some of the so-called payments in the budget about this and that. In the US, for example, a different country, the president's meals are paid for. Everything is accountable. Why can't our parliamentarians, their expenses in the UK, parliamentarians submit their expenses? Yeah. So we created a country of privilege. That's why I call it neo-feudal. Our leaders are like lords, the feudal lords. So they have a right to take out resources. And so when you fall out of favor with the government, when this government leaves, another government, then they will prosecute. But I want to see a country. Fighting corruption is basically signaling new behavior. Look, this is a country. The country doesn't belong to you. The office is not your office. When I left NEC, for example, I had to return back painting that I didn't know which one was my own. I returned later. They said it's my own. I have to return back the player, the Bose player that was mine because my PA couldn't find the receipt. And I sent it back. The guy who bought it for me, the current MD of Embed, said, "Oga, I bought it for you." I said, because I couldn't account. Because it's not your office. That's
a great sense of accountability. But you have something still on the OML 245.
Yeah, I mean, in line with what he has just said, this talks about the character of people in government and the value system of government. And I think we need to address that. And you see, that we talk about politicians a lot. Some of these civil servants, you see also, they are very, very, involved in all of these corrupt activities.
If not 90% of it,
for us to address it, we must also address certain things about the country. For example, we need to talk about our wage system in this country. Yeah, a situation whereby someone who is a civil servant at the end of the day, maybe someone who just leaves university, is doing federal government work with maybe 60,000 naira or 70,000 naira, and it will take donkey years for the person to get to the level of 150,000 and 200. Compare the money he's getting in a month vis-a-vis the demands, the accommodation challenges and all of that. Absolutely. There are no incentive for people working in government. So it is even very, very difficult. You'll be surprised a lot of civil servants, they have their children in private universities. They have, in this country, you see civil servants with 3, 4 children, 5 children. There are a lot of things that must be addressed. A lot of people who don't have capacity to take care of children, they are giving birth to plenty children.
Let's look at the oil blocks that he talked about. Shouldn't that system of awarding oil blocks be scrapped and the rest?
Like
because we're not talking...
The explanation he gave, now, it is not just about the oil blocks alone. It is generally in government. You see, people who come into government see government as an opportunity to take their own share of what belongs to them in the country.
They call it national cake.
They bucanize the system and they take advantage of the system. Now, a serious country that is giving out oil block blazed on. Okay, let me quickly say this. Look at our billionaires in Nigeria. What are their antecedents? What have they done? What's their pedigree? You go what is the innovation? You go to US, people mention people's name, they tell you they've done this discovery and all of that. But you have plenty of them all over the places. What actually have they done? No, but they've just taken advantage of the system. And that is why the younger generation we are building today
are not looking up to
desperate because there is no value, there's nothing to see. There are no mentors out there. Those people they see as mentors, they are crooks. So they are desperate. Today, Nigeria is producing about 1.7 million graduates every year. And the country cannot employ 100,000, both in private and public sector. So the tragedy is that about 1.6 million people leave our tertiary institution and they join the colony of unemployed. And these people must survive. And that is why you see there's expansion of internet fraud and all of that. And let me quickly say this. This country would have been worse for it if not for some of this small criminality that the system has allowed. Because criminality in the advanced way of robbery would have been very, very terrible. So for this country to address all of these things, we need to actually, okay, we talk about a serious, this government came in 2015. I mean, and the government had a lot of support. They had the opportunity to change the narrative of this country. If you go to tertiary institutions, we talk about changing, I mean, our source of income, you know, moving from a mono-economic system, diversifying, moving from oil to other things. But when you go to our tertiary institutions, if they are giving admission in 2019 in University of Abuja, for example, you will discover that sociology department will have 500 students, and computer science, where they need to learn ICT, agriculture will have 50. And so you begin to imagine that what are the priorities, what are the planning in the educational sector. And you also discover that there's no scholarship, there's no encouragement, there's nothing for some of these persons so that they can advance a better cause and become something for their future. So the way the country is actually structured not to survive, not to succeed. It's structured for some people to benefit and to enjoy. And that is why some of these privileged people, immediately they are able to steal from the system, they take their children out of the country, they set up a new system for themselves because they don't even trust the system they are part of. And that is the challenge. So if we must address the challenges and the issue of corruption in this country, it's not just about the oil sector, it's not just about aliboting, it's not just about fighting recovery money, it's about government sitting down, redesigning the concept and the purpose of government.
Absolutely. Sam, let me let you round up this discussion on which way forward. I
think I agree with him. So the corruption is characteristic of Nigeria as set up. Therefore, fighting corruption requires resetting Nigeria. As when we talk about
but it's achievable.
Very easy. But when we talk about structure, people are panicking. This Nigeria, to be frank, is designed to be corrupt. It's managing not to be totally corrupt. So a government like Buhari can pursue some people, terrify others, and achieve small. By the way, look at the trajectory. Buhari first coming, he jailed some people. Is that not correct? His second comment is talking about corruption.
And he's just said that, look, the system is too slow for him because he probably would have jailed more.
If he jailed people, and the people he jailed later came back to be legislators. One former senator, a former DIG, was in the Senate when I was special advisor with Kenama. You know what he said? He said, I'm terrified that the people I jailed as criminals are with me. So the failure of first Buhari is that he jailed people, but they're back. Second Buhari should not fail. He should attack the institution inside the country so that when he won't have to come back again to fight corruption.
So that it would have...
Otherwise, it would become a recurrent. Buhari come third one.
All right, gentlemen. I wish we have more time, but I'm sure the people outside there would have
create a legacy of changing it forever so it doesn't come back to fight anymore.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Pelumi Olajegbensi is a public interest lawyer, and Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a senior lecturer at Bayes University. Well, that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again for another edition from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye, and thanks for watching.